Can you bypass that and just go direct to Facebook?
Oh, no, let me see. It looks like try to check your stream. I think we're
Oh,
good now.
looks like we're live.
Yeah,
But are we
it
live on
can,
Restream?
yeah, we're live restream.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about the delay there.
All right. Somehow we had some technical difficulties, but welcome everybody. Those are on a Zoom platform. And if we got Restream working, that means we're streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
Yeah, and we want to make sure we record the video.
Yeah, forgot about that. Uh,
I got him.
okay, I couldn't even find the button.
No problem. I got that.
Everything
They messed
moved.
up everything
I had
else.
everything on the top before. Now it's on the bottom. But
Yeah. You're good. You're good.
so much for technology and AI and all this stuff. But we're not going to be talking about AI. This is Lance Luke, Martin Pea, Ask the Building Expert webinar series. Welcome everybody. We got an interesting topic. That has to do with buildings, but it also has to do with climate change and coastal erosion. So thanks for tuning in. If you're on our Zoom platform or watching or listening to us on our various social media platforms, we welcome you. And we're going to be talking about the historical overview of coastal erosion at KAHANA Sunset. And if you're not from Hawaii or you're from Hawaii and you don't know where KAHANA is, this KAHANA is on Maui. And KAHANA Sunset is a condominium project located on the island of Maui. I know there's a KAHANA on Oahu too. So don't get it confused. So we're going to be addressing decades of environmental challenges, and this whole topic could be covered in a 10-hour seminar and probably still information that hasn't been discussed, but I'm going to try and concise everything in about 30 minutes. And so my apologies if I don't cover every single thing, but I'm just going to kind of give you highlights of the major events that happened over several decades. We skip through this. Webinars presented by Construction Management Inspection. And here's the introduction. So KAHANA is an area on Maui that's close to Lahaina. So if you're in Lahaina, you go north and you pass Ka'anapali. It's about 7 miles. It takes about 15 minutes. Depends on traffic. When I was in Kula, staying in Kula, it took over an hour to get to Lahaina. And because of the traffic, so 36 miles took about hour and a half or so. So anyway, that's where KAHANA is. Nice beach, ocean, and all that. But we're going to be talking about maybe the ocean's not so nice. So we're going to be discussing the issue of coastal erosion. And you may ask, well, what does it have to do with buildings? There's a lot. Okay, for instance, on Oahu, in the North Shore area, there's houses that actually have slid into the beach, into the ocean, and continues to do so due to coastal erosion, elevated seawater, high tide, even at low tide, could be still a factor. So when we talk about coastal erosion, we're talking about the beach erosion, sand, rocks, all that stuff. We want to try to prevent property damage, ensure public safety, maintain the environment. There's a lot of environmental conditions in the ocean and actually on the beach. And then sustainable management strategies are essential. We have a problem here, and we're trying to see how it's going to be fixed, who the players are, and all that can help. So let's go back in time, the early history. During the time of 1971 to 1978, I don't know about you, I was still in high school. Martin, you may have graduated already, but so during the years 1971 to 1978, here's the history. In 1971, the establishment of KAHANA Sunset. KAHANA Sunset is a condominium project that's made up of several buildings. So just imagine nice, beautiful beach right at the ocean, and you have condo buildings right there. So initially, the building distance from the shoreline seemed like it was adequate, because when I visited in the 80s, you could walk along the beach in front of the buildings, and the beach is actually part private property and part state land. And let me go back to the initial photo. Okay, so if you look at this photo here, it's like a kind of like a bird's eye view taken from the air, and you can see the building, and you can see where the ocean is. Now, in the 80s, when I was there, where you see all that, where you see the blue water and then the whitewash, all that white area on the sand, all that whitewash area that used to be beach, there was sand there, and you could walk over there. And now you see it eroded away so much that it's affecting the building. The building is too close to the ocean now and could actually, fall in the water. Now, the way the state of Hawaii property division is, there's a watermark, or when the tide goes in, the area of high tide or low tide, wherever, that's the demarcation of where the state land is and where the private property is. So the land is not like, you can't draw a line there, and it's not constant because it keeps changing. So for instance, low tide, the private property has more land, and then high tide, the private property owner has less land. So in this case, what used to be the KAHANA Sunset property is now state land, and that's kind of like a challenge there. But that's state law regarding where your property is, and the reason for the law is so that private property owners don't end up owning all the beaches and there's no public access. Okay, so in this situation, for this particular building, there's no public access because the water has gotten too close to the building. Okay, so that's a major issue. Not necessarily the access for public, but the situation that the building is too close to the ocean and it's very dangerous. So let's skip over after the introduction. Okay, so in 1975, there was initial defense measures. Now, it was known that in 1975 now, here we are in 2024, and people are still not sure whether this whole climate change is true or not. This sea level rise and all this stuff, you know, people still don't believe it, right? There's all these conspiracy theories and whatnot. But in 1975, it was known and it was discussed. And so the state approved a seawall. And there's in the state of Hawaii, we got so many rules regarding the ocean, shoreline setback, and all that. Shoreline setback is basically the rules on if you have oceanfront property, what can you build, where can you build it, and so forth. I mean, it's to read it, it's kind of complicated, but it's a good thing, right? So in 1975, there was an approval to construct a seawall under shoreline setback rules. And normally, you can't just install a seawall anywhere, right? Because it affects the tide, the current of the water, and in some cases, and it's been proven that construction of a seawall actually causes more damage than not. And if people don't agree that the coastal erosion in our beaches washing away is a problem, then you just look at historically, what's happening over the years. Like you look at Waikiki Beach, how many times do they have to bring in more sand because the sand gets washed away, and they have to bring tons of sand and fill the beaches, and it's not going to last forever. Eventually the sand's going to get washed away, and then you got to bring in more sand. I mean, that's happening, right? It's been happening for years. So in 1975, that's what happened. And in 1978, the waves kept coming in and erosion still happened. So in 1978, there's increased erosion concerns. There was a certified shoreline documentation completed. And over the years, there's been many pros and cons to what should we do to mitigate the problem? We want the buildings to still be there. So we don't want to move the building. So there's people who actually live and own in the project. Of course, they don't want to have to move. And then you have these environmental people who want to save the beach. They don't want to have to have more walls built or any kind of structure right on the beach. So there's been kind of a fight over that over the years. So let's talk about the 80s, 1980s to 1999. The midterm challenges. There was still ongoing. The erosion never stopped, and it's like no matter what you do, it never stops. And the same goes for, let's take a house on the North Shore. Okay, these homeowners wanted beachfront property, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But due to climate change, coastal erosion, sea level rise, and those kind of things, the sand kept eroding away. So the person who had a big backyard and coconut trees, all of a sudden, his fence ended up in the ocean. The trees ended up in the ocean. He lost half his yard, and then he lost his whole yard. The next thing, his house is like on a cliff, ready to fall down. So what do you do as a homeowner? The homeowner decided to do what he thought he had to do and installed different things. Various homeowners over time brought in huge pieces of lumber that they set, in their yard on the beach. They actually brought huge boulders. They poured concrete. They made a concrete wall. They made these berms. They brought in more sand. They did whatever they could, right? And um, you know, you heard of the Mexican food, burritos. Well, there's a term where you fill up these sandbags, these big sandbags, fill it up with sand. I think they use like canvas material or something like that. Uh, and it's huge. And they stack these burritos like sandbags to protect, but it doesn't last forever, right? So nothing that was done is going to last, right? These big boulders, sometimes they could move because of the waves. And what happens is one neighbor installs a wall, concrete, rocks, or whatever, and then the waves hit his wall and then end up having an effect on the next door neighbor, who now has more of a problem because the water hits the wall and can't go anywhere. So it ends up now eroding the two neighbors on either side of his house. Now, that's just a secondary problem. So in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of community meetings and mitigation measures taken. The government, got more involved and tried to see what can be done. So in 2007 to 2009, and I'm just skipping over time. A lot of things happened during this time frame, but because of the webinar time factor, I can't be talking for 8 hours. So I'm trying to make everything fit in a 30-minute time frame. So here we go. Fast forward or flash forward to 2007. The government intervenes in seawall repairs. So if you look at this photo, you can see, beach and the seawall made out of concrete. But then in 2009, there was a critical storm damage. So evacuation and emergency stabilization measures. So over time, things have been slow and then things have been fixed. Okay, so, but that's not problem solved. So there was legal and environmental challenges, in later 2012 and beyond. So in 2012, there was a shoreline survey withdrawal. There was a disagreement on the shoreline placement. And like I mentioned before, high tide, low tide, where's actually the shoreline? Okay, now naturally, if you're environmentalist, you want to save the beaches and all that, you're going to want the shoreline to be moved in as far as possible. Then you get more ocean. But if you're a homeowner at Kahana Sunset, you want the shoreline to be farther toward the beach so you have more property. And then the other thing is, if you move that line further toward the beach, then it's in the mindset, now your building is far away from the ocean, not that close. But as you saw in the photo, there's no disagreement as to whether there was a precarious situation because of the closeness of the ocean. So 2012, there was a disagreement on where the actual shoreline was. It ended up in court. In 2013, there was more evidence by photos due to accelerated erosion. So the evidence showed beyond a shadow of the doubt that there is problems. Now, no one can disagree that the shoreline had eroded away and the beach is getting larger and the property that Kahana Sunset sits on is getting smaller. Okay, so that's the big situation. So the proximity and the legislation, 2014 to 2021. In 2014, Building F was just 8 feet from the shoreline, 8 feet. So can you imagine standing out in your balcony and the ocean is right there? That's not a good situation, because let's say there's a huge storm, it's a hurricane, and the sea level rises, or there's a tsunami, right? So Building F was a problematic building because of the location. In 2020, it was Act 16, the State of Hawaii legislative action, and it prohibited new shoreline hardening structures. Now, what is hardening structures? What is the definition? The definition is basically you can't do anything to the shoreline by, and remember I discussed this before, cutting and trucking in huge logs, setting it on the beach. You cannot build pillars of concrete or haul in big boulders, or can't basically do anything to save your property. Okay, that's what hardening structures. So you can't use lumber, you can't use concrete, you can't use rocks, you can't use soil, you can't bring in additional sand, you can't make burritos, tamales, tortillas, or whatever. So the state of Hawaii is saying that you can't do any of that. Okay, that's why around each island, and in Honolulu, we have North Shore, the homeowners get cited for bringing in rocks and concrete, pouring new concrete, building a wall, making a retaining wall, a seawall, whatever you want to call it. They get cited and they get fined for that, because the state is claiming this is our state property. You're restricted from doing anything on the beach. So in other words, you have beachfront property that belongs to the state. You can't do anything to that property. You just got to let the waves do whatever they want. Now, herein lies the problem. The ocean keeps taking away property, and what used to be the homeowner's property now becomes state property. And so state property becomes bigger and bigger. So now you keep getting restricted. Now, you can put up a wall in your own yard, right? But the state comes in and says, that's not your yard. It's part of beachfront property now, because of the sea level rise and the increased shoreline. So that's why there was litigation and all that. But once the state government passed that Act 16, now that became law. So anybody who wants to do anything, and I've been Haleiwa, North Shore, and I've seen a lot of illegal walls, and they're illegal because you can't get a permit to build on state property like that, right? The other thing is that the discussion is that, well, the homeowner says he had to do it, otherwise he would lose his house. So that's why there's legal conflicts. In 2021, Building F was declared unsafe. So it's a vacant building. Nobody lives there. So can you imagine being a condo owner and being affected, and you have to move out of your building? What happens to these people who can't live there? Where are they going to live, right? And because they're homeowners, they're still homeowners. They still have to pay maintenance fee, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. Okay, let's fast forward to 2023, 2024, recent developments. In 2023, temporary measures and legal actions. It was like back and forth, emergency permits, do assessment, community got involved, and there's two sides. You know, one, we want to save the property, we want to save the buildings, and the other side says, no, your buildings have to move, right? They're too close to the ocean. Well, we don't have money to move the building. We basically, after we spent money to kind of fix the shoreline and all that, we don't have extra money to do anything, right? So there's this map here, a flood hazard assessment tool, and there's different zones. And in the 70s, there was really no red area or flood zone per se. I mean, it's pretty obvious that when you have beachfront property, you're in a flood zone already, right? So, but it gets worse over time. So if you look at the colors of the red, that's a coastal flood zone, right? And then the blue area is little inside, and then the green is farther away. So where, I mean, what are we going to do? The building is located in the red zone, and does it have to be moved? Can it be moved? And where, if it can be moved, where is it going to be located? Is it going to be located in the blue zone, or does it have to be located in the green zone? And it's kind of up in the air right now, because even Lahaina, those commercial buildings, those wood frame commercial buildings on Front Street, they want to rebuild, but can they? They can't build how the building was back then, because due to the coastal erosion and all that, there's talk about, oh, you gotta build it now 6 feet above the ground. Okay, but then will that actually work? And can we build right next to each other? I mean, in the old days, commercial property, you could build right on the property line. So that's why all those wood frame buildings were side by side. And once one building catches on fire, all the whole buildings, the rest of the buildings in the row are going to go up in flames also. And that's what happened. Okay, so let's move to 2024, a year of decisions. There were contested case hearings and community engagement. It's still not resolved yet, but the reason for this webinar is to let you know, a lot of people, when they asked about what are you going to be talking about, and I give them the title, they said, well, we didn't even know this kind of thing was happening in our own state. And I said, yes, it's been happening. And they heard of like houses on the North Shore of Oahu, falling in the ocean and getting fined from the state, but they didn't know about neighbor islands. Every neighbor island has a similar situation, maybe not that bad. Okay, so let's talk about some key issues and actions. What happens when there's coastal erosion, such as KAHANA Sunset? There's structural failures, and maybe not the building sinking or falling in the water, but enough to the degree where there's a mandatory evacuation, right? There could be issues where people's lives are at stake, and that's why the government stepped in and said, you have to shut down your building. And there's 2 buildings in the complex that are like that. In addition, there's legal and environmental challenges, as you know. There's 2 sides. One, we want to save our beach. 2, we want to save our property. We want to save our building. Now, how can that be settled? Okay, that's why it ends up in litigation. The other issue is that the property rights versus public access. The public has access to the beach, but in cases where the beach got washed away, right? Where's the line? The public has a right to access the beach, but if there's no beach, does the public still have access? What about the property rights of the landowner, the homeowner? What rights do they have, right? So that's become a big issue. Manage retreat suggestions, and then the other issue is vacation rentals and housing issues. Now, you might say, what is this managed retreat? Is it like, when we had Napoleon War and Napoleon was winning all these battles, and then there was a big one where he couldn't win, so he told everybody retreat, right? And you kind of run backwards away because you don't want to get killed, right? So in this situation, management retreat regarding property or land or the situation that we're discussing, the definition is having to do with climate change and adaptation strategy that involves moving people, moving buildings, and infrastructure away from areas that are vulnerable to climate change hazards, such as flooding and sea level rise. Now, it's not just picking up the building and moving it further inland, okay? It's not as simple as that. You cannot pick up the building and move it. It's not like a mobile home or anything. So in most cases, and I'm not sure if the building can be dismantled, taken apart and rebuilt. I've known and heard of situations where single family houses, they can do that, right? But let's say you have to demolish the building and then build a new building. That costs a lot of money. And it's not only the building, you have infrastructure, you have your utilities, you have your electrical lines, you have your plumbing, your drain piping, your plumbing lines to get water, you have your cable, you have your fiber optic and all that. All that has to be taken into consideration. So it's like just building a new building from scratch, right? And it's not simple. And it takes a lot of planning, preparation, and it takes a lot of money. And I'll give you an example. And I don't think there's any insurance that would cover this and pay for this. But here's an example. In Lahaina, when they had the fire, the whole condo building burnt down. And they got an insurance valuation settlement for $9 million. Okay? But do you know that it costs 14 to 15 million to build a new building? So here you have a condo association that got $9 million in the bank. They cannot build their building because they don't have enough money. They need more money. And how are they gonna get that money? Right? A bank loan or special assessment or whatever. Usually that's what happens when condominium properties need money to fix their roofs or paint the buildings and that kind of thing. But because it's a condo, these people are still paying their maintenance fees, even if they don't have anywhere to live. It's just kind of a sad situation. But let's get back to the management retreat. The entire goal of this management retreat idea is to reduce the risk of damage, minimize costs, and maximize benefits for communities and ecosystems. While naturally, moving the building further inland, it helps the ecosystem, it helps the beach, because now you don't have any building falling into the ocean. Like, the recent house on the North Shore. So the management retreat can be proactive, a proactive option that supports communities' livelihoods. It can involve various and variety of policies, such as a voluntary buyout. But is that going to happen? Is the government going to come in and say, "Well, this area is dangerous, so we're gonna buy the property"? First of all, does the government have that kind of money to do it? Secondly, is the condo owners willing to sell? Right? They're going, well, wait a minute. I invested money. This is the only place I have. I'm not just going to sell out to you. I don't have anywhere to go. And then the money that I get is not enough for me to buy another property. So there's a legal action called condemnation using eminent domain. That means that the government can step in and legally take over the property by paying market value for the property, as long as the property is for public use or benefits the public. Okay, so that may be a possibility. But remember I said you move one building and then you got to move all your utilities and all that. Well, what about the roads to get to the building? You have to relocate the road, the parking lot and all that. So that's additional costs right then and there. Okay. Also, does it involve changing the zoning district now that we move the building inland? Does it change zoning? Does it change anything else? What about conservation of wetlands when we do that? There could be other things like in different other properties. It could be protecting the habitat, migration areas. I know there's this one area from Lahaina to, from Kahalui driving to Lahaina. I forget, there's a sugar mill, old sugar mill area and all that, and you drive and on either side it's like wetlands and all that. Protection of something like that. And the other thing is, investing in safer and affordable housing. Well, if you ask me, there's no such thing as affordable housing. That's a misused term all the time. But that's just me. And then a safer environment. Now, this whole issue has come up because of years and years of going back and forth and the beach eroding away. But why don't you think about every island and all these buildings that are built on the ocean? Okay, what happens to those buildings in the future, knowing that the sea level is gonna rise? Okay, in Waikiki, you got all these buildings on the beach. You got houses on the beachfront. Waikiki itself, right? And then you go to Kona, there's Ali'i Drive. You got all these hotels and condo buildings all on the beach, right? Maui, similar. Kaanapali is, you got all these buildings is built right on the beach. If it's not on the beach on sand, it's on rocks that are basically on the beach. So you have all these issues going on. Kauai, you have a lot of homes right on the beach, and it's not even elevated. It's like if you have high tide, now your front yard becomes a pond. Okay, so hopefully you got a good idea of what's going on, and the awareness. I want people to understand that this thing isn't going to go away. There's no matter how conspiracy theory minded people are thinking it's not happening, it's happening. It's happening not only in Hawaii, but in the United States. If you look at California. California is a good example of what's happening with this coastal erosion. And then I've studied reports around the world, Spain, Portugal, uh, Italy. You got a lot of areas where it's experiencing the same thing, even in the east, the east side, right? Um, so it's not going away anytime soon. So what is a conclusion? We just need to be aware of what's happening, understand what's going on, and see what we can do. Is there anything that can be done? What's the answer to all of this stuff? And let me just interject one thing. If you ask about climate change, what's happening with the sea level rise, there's studies being done. There's these huge glaciers, and guess what? When the glaciers melt because of the warming, and that's why they call it global warming. When the glaciers melt, it's adding hundreds of thousands, millions of gallons to the ocean. And what happens when all that water is added to the ocean? The ocean has to rise, right? It's not sinking, it's rising. So when you have all these coastal areas, beaches, and you have now all this water, it's just going to inundate all these coastal areas. I've seen maps of the future, and it doesn't look good. You have like all Waikiki underwater, San Francisco, LA underwater, Florida underwater, no, New Orleans is underwater. I mean, it just doesn't look good. So you gotta figure, well, what's happening here? What can be done? Let me let you know what you missed in previous webinars. We've given webinars on all kinds of things: roofing, concrete spalling, painting. I talked about Sagrada Familia, old buildings in Italy, all that. It's on our website. What's coming up? We have a building safety webinar coming up, and then we have I forget already, but I know there's one in December about safety during Christmas time, Christmas lighting, Christmas tree, and that kind of thing. So go to our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. We have a whole bunch of expert websites for each thing, like asphalt, concrete licensing, roofing, building permits, and all that. We have special websites for all that we made. We have blogs that are available on our website, and we have a whole bunch of webinars that you can go to. Watch it on your own time. It's free. You don't even need an account or pay anything. And then books. If you're into reading books, that's fine. If you're not, at least listen to the webinars. But if you want, all these books are available on Amazon. I think as of yesterday, there's like 25 books on Amazon. But if you want the free book, you can get a free download by go to the publication section of our website. And then now we're at the Q&A. You got questions, I got answers. I got my phone number here, our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site, and my email. Gee, Martin, I don't know who put my cell number here. My phone's going to be ringing off the hook. So anyway, let me turn it over to you and see if we got any questions. I know I kind of breezed through fast, but we got about 10 minutes. I know we started a little late, but we try to finish on time. So
Sure enough. Well, there's been a few questions from looks like some very interested people in this topic. So let me give you the first one. It says, after hearing about managed retreat from Kahana for Kahana Sunset, I'm curious about how this might affect our investments. Could you explain how it impacts property values?
okay, very simple. if you have any kind of natural disaster or what happened here, um, it greatly affects property values, because if you can't live in your building, what is your condo worth? Let's say we invested in a condo, and I don't know what the market value is. I never checked, but let's say it didn't have this problem. Is the unit worth, 700, 800, $1 million? And if you have to evacuate the building, no one can live there, guess what? What is the value of it? It's zero, right? But actually, that's not the true value. The true value is negative, below zero, because it's going to cost money to build another building, or fix this one up, or do something, right? So that becomes a whole issue. So hopefully the owners of these condo units aren't paying any property taxes, because there's no value, right? But overall, there's value in the land. So the argument is, well, wait a minute, even if you can't live there, you still own a percentage of the land. So the land is worth X million dollars, so you still got to pay your property taxes. I don't know how the thing is being settled, but definitely that's the problem. If you look at the Hurricane Milton, what happened, and houses got blown away, destroyed, flooded, and all that, what's the value to that? There's zero value. You can't, and hopefully a lot of people have insurance. Sometimes if you're in a flood zone, you can't get insurance. So that becomes another issue. So hopefully I answered that question. Now, the best way is to hire an appraiser to do an appraisal, but that gets quite expensive depending on what you're going to use the appraisal for. So that's good. I mean, sorry that the answer is not so positive, but it is what it is. That's reality.
Yep, definitely. Unfortunate too, yeah. Well, the next question we had here is another listening viewer here. It says, with new laws against shoreline hardening, what building methods do you see becoming more common in Maui for coastal properties, or even here? Yeah.
The answer is, I don't know. I haven't had any discussion or found any information that is positive. If you call the state, DLNR, and these different departments, and ask them, what can I do? They're going to tell you nothing. You can't. You can build whatever you want on your property, but you can't build on state property. But if the state property is your backyard, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do to protect your property, and that's why there's a fight. And it's going back and forth. Some people say, well, the state should step in and do something, help the people, give the homeowner money, and then on the other side, people are saying, well, wait a minute, these guys knew that they were buying property on the beach, right? So I can't afford to buy property on the beach, oceanfront property. So why should the government use my tax dollars to go help that guy, right? So there's that whole issue that I really don't want to get involved in, because it's so touchy. And when you're dealing with people's property, I mean, that's their domain. It's like the king of the castle. You're not going to go knock on the king's door and say, hey, buddy, guess what? You got to move your castle. You're too close to the beach, right? You get kicked out or shot at or whatever. So, good questions.
Yeah, another
Seems
tough
like
one.
the person that asked the question is a homeowner there, but yeah, sorry, there's not much that can be done.
Okay, thanks, Lance. We get one more that came in, and probably another very interested viewer. You mentioned community engagement during your talk. What are some simple ways we can start participating in sustainable coastal management efforts? Ooh, that's a big one.
Well, one thing would be to just be aware, and if you're interested, kind of see what's out there, what the options are and all that. I know it gets heated, property owner versus estate versus environmentalist and all that. And there's always at least two sides to the situation. And you hear both sides and kind of judge for yourself. Uh, you don't have to necessarily pick a side if you're not involved in the fight, but if you are, uh, we're fully aware of where you stand. If you're a homeowner as part of the condo association or a board member, or you represent the association, we know where you stand, right? And we appreciate that. And on the other hand, if you want to save the beach, save the ocean, save the environment and all that, we're aware of that too. Um, it's just a very, very difficult situation, and it's not going away. That's why it's trying to get the government involved and see what the government can do. But the government doesn't have all this pot of money where they can just throw here and there, right? So, and because condominiums are a different animal, right? It's a condo association. A lot of times the government's saying, you guys are your own government. You know, you deal with the problem. But that's, I don't think that's how government should be. Sometimes the government steps in and they enforce too much, and then sometimes they don't do enough. So there's always, you know, at least two sides to the situation. But I know we're kind of running out of time, but we have any last minute comments or questions? If people do later, if you're watching the replay, you can always you know, post to the various social media platforms, and we'll get to you.
No, Lance, that seems to be it. No other comments that I've seen. No other questions, but tough topic, and I think it's something that can affect all our shoreline properties, obviously, yes. So it's a matter of what we can do to prepare for it, or like for me, I live up in the mountains, stay away from the ocean as far as
Yeah,
property.
I live in a mountain too, but it's less than a mile to walk to the beach. So I prefer that. Okay, well, good. So on behalf of Martin and myself, we appreciate you attending our webinar. We hope you attend future webinars. And I know this is a difficult subject to talk about. It's not too positive, but you know, we just got to get the information out. So hope to see you at the next webinar. Until then, thank you very much. Mahalo.